today we'll be covering off, let me just go there, on a few different things. So we're going to be covering off on Wi-Fi, what it is, how to access it, and how to use it. Data. So again, what it is and how it's different from Wi-Fi. And airplane mode, which is very useful if you're traveling or if you are low on data. So I'll be teaching you how to use all of these features here. And one other thing I just want to mention, and you guys are probably familiar with this already, as this is, I believe, the third class that we've had so far, is if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please let me know. There are slides for questions, but I don't like using them. I would rather you just jumped in and ask me questions at any point. I want to make sure you're comfortable throughout the presentation. So,
Thank you.
no problem. So starting out, we'll be talking about Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi, it's a short form of wireless fidelity, but essentially what it is it's the way for you to connect to the internet. So for your phone to connect to the online world. Wi-Fi is used by pretty much all your apps in your phone to just basically operate, really. Yeah, almost everything nowadays uses some form of internet connection. Now, Wi-Fi and data are similar in that they both will connect you to the internet. It's just how they do that that is different between the two. So essentially what Wi-Fi is a connection that's done through mostly through your home network or through hotspots in places like coffee shops or restaurants or whatnot. So typically Wi-Fi is different from data in that it is um, done through your own router. You pay typically a flat fee on a monthly basis for getting Wi-Fi, and you usually don't have limits in terms of how much data you can use. Or most of the internet service providers don't have data limits, or if they do, they're very, very high. So in Calgary here, we have a couple of internet service providers. Typically, you'll be able to see things like Shaw Communications or TELUS. There's a few others as well. But all of these are providers of internet. And then through them, you can actually broadcast Wi-Fi to your phone. Now, Wi-Fi is just the internet being sent to your phone wirelessly. That's really the big difference between plugging in your phone to your router or your computer to your router versus connecting wirelessly. So Wi-Fi is just wirelessly connecting to your internet service provider. So now, chatting really quickly about how to determine whether or not your Wi-Fi is turned on. So at the top of your Android device there, if you drag down from the top there, you should see a whole bunch of different settings options. Typically, Wi-Fi will be one of the main options that you see when you pull down. Usually if it's grayed out, that means you're not connected to anything or Wi-Fi is actually turned off. If it's colored like the picture on the screen here, so in this case it's green, that means it's turned on. Turned on doesn't necessarily mean connected. It just means that your Wi-Fi is enabled on your phone there. In a second, I'll talk about what it actually looks like to connect to a network there. But right now, I'm just going to get you to use your phones and just drag down from the top of the screen and just see if your Wi-Fi is turned on or turned off. So if everybody could
On.
just
On.
on, cool.
Oh,
On, Lena, is yours on?
yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Excellent, awesome. Wi-Fi is used all the time, so I'd be surprised if it wasn't turned on. So next, we're going to talk about how to actually see what network you're connected on. So like with all Android devices, it's going to be a little bit different depending on the device you have in order to get to the settings for it. So if you have a Samsung device, what you're going to do is you're going to go into settings. So again, that's one of the apps that you have there. So it should look something like this. And then you're going to connect or click on connections. If you're on a Huawei device, you're going to click on Wi-Fi. And if you're on a Lenovo device, it's going to be called network and internet. So I'll give you a moment just to go onto that on your phone. Is everybody able to find it?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. So when you pull up your Wi-Fi settings here, what you're going to see when you first, or what you're going to do when you click on connections is it's going to come up with a few different options there. What you want to click on for this example here is the Wi-Fi. So when you click on it, there's going to be a little slider on the right-hand side. For now, don't click on the little slider. Just click on like the main part of the Wi-Fi option here. What that will do is it will bring up the available networks and some of the other settings you have with Wi-Fi. So what you're going to see on this screen here is a few things. The first one is the little slider on the right-hand side. Now, what this is telling you is whether or not your Wi-Fi is turned on or turned off. So again, if it's turned on, you'll see it look something like this. If it's turned off, then you won't be able to connect to the internet through Wi-Fi. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to see a bunch of available networks. So depending on where you live or where you're located, you're going to see maybe one or multiple networks on there. I live in a condo in downtown Calgary, and when I look at my list of Wi-Fi networks, I see about probably 30 of them because every single unit in my condo building has their own network. So they all broadcast, and sometimes they can have funny names. So I oftentimes will go back into it just to check and see if anybody's created something interesting. I like this one on here. So this example photo, somebody had created a network called the Little Witch, which I think is kind of interesting. But anyways, what the other thing you're going to see here is a little status indicator for the signal strength. So on here, you're going to see a little broadcast beacon, and usually the more bars that are lit up, the better the signal strength is. The other thing that you might see on here is a little lock icon, and I'll actually talk about this more in just a in just a second here. But the lock icon is very important in terms of what networks you can actually connect to. So in your own home, you're going to see a different list than what I have on the screen here. Um, you probably are going to have to find the password from your router or from one of your family members who originally set it up there. But if you haven't already connected to your home's Wi-Fi network, I want you to click on it now. And then on the next screen, it will actually ask you to set up a password. If you've already connected, don't worry about this. You don't have to do it right now. So next, I want to just take a quick moment to tell you about some of the different Wi-Fi network options. Now, this may or may not be relevant to how you operate in kind of your day-to-day life and day-to-day workings with Wi-Fi. But there's a few different ways that you can actually connect to your Wi-Fi network. Now, on here, there's a description of 4 different network options that you might end up seeing. So the first one on here is a little symbol that looks like a computer monitor with a little cable on the left-hand side. This one you likely will never see on your phone because typically you won't actually connect via a cable. But that would be the logo that you would see if you were connecting like a cable to your phone to connect to the internet there. Almost nobody ever does this because it's not really practical, especially when you can connect wirelessly. The next 3 options here are what you're likely going to see more often. So on your phone, you may not know, or the wireless network that you're connecting to, you may not know which one of these you're connecting to, but I'll just briefly describe what you might see. So sometimes your network might show up as something with a little number at the end. So maybe 2.4, maybe 5. What these are is different frequencies for that wireless network. So 2.4 gigahertz network versus 5 gigahertz network, they differ in essentially the range, the interference, and the speeds that they can provide. So 2.4 gigahertz networks typically provide longer range, so you can connect further away. But there's typically more interference with these ones. There's lots of things that use the 2.4 gigahertz networks, like your microwave, maybe some old phones, some other devices in your house that are Wi-Fi connected. And usually because of this, the max speeds are typically lower. The 5 gigahertz networks, so usually the range for these ones are shorter, but the interference is less, and your speeds can typically be higher on this. So oftentimes when you're in your own home there, you're going to be seeing more of the 5 gigahertz ones than the 2.4 gigahertz ones. More typically modern routers nowadays will automatically select between 2.4 and 5 depending on what works best and kind of the connection quality. Usually they'll start with 5, and if 5 isn't working, it'll automatically switch to 2.4. Some networks will actually broadcast multiple networks. So they'll broadcast a 5 gigahertz network and a 2.4 gigahertz network. If you have the option for connecting to one or the other, I usually suggest connecting to the 5 gigahertz network, just because you're in your own home. Usually you're not going to get that much interference unless you're in a condo, and it's going to be a little bit faster for you. Now, if you look at the networks and you don't see the 2.4 or the 5, unfortunately, you can't really tell which kind of network it actually is. Don't worry about it. It's not going to make a huge difference for your day-to-day life in terms of using Wi-Fi. But if you do see these numbers at the end, now you know what they mean. The last one on here is a guest network. So you might see guest at the end of the network there. Sometimes what people will do is they'll set up guest networks so that people can, friends, family, whatnot, can connect to their Wi-Fi, but without actually having to open up their Wi-Fi and their home network to having all their devices visible. This may or may not be set up in your own home network there. And usually, if it is, that you probably won't be using it for yourself. You might be using it if you're bringing like one of your friends over. Um, that being said, if you don't see it on your network, don't worry about it. It's not. Any questions on this part? I know this one is maybe a little bit more complicated in terms of. Sounds like we're okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Lena.
Brian, on my screen, it's just connected devices. So should I press this one? Just a Bluetooth here.
Oh, do you see Wi-Fi? One for Wi-Fi? Or one that says network?
Network. Oh, this one, network, and oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's the one that you want to be in.
That's the one.
Oh, and then
Okay,
do you see Wi-Fi in there?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank
So
you.
then click on Wi-Fi, just click on the name Wi-Fi, and then that should bring up your list of networks.
Oh yeah, this.
Perfect. That's exactly what you want to see. Okay, so that's where we are right now.
Thank you.
No worries. So earlier I mentioned that on the Wi-Fi logo, on the little symbol that shows the connection strength, you might see a little lock. On this picture, it's a little hard to see, but what the little lock means is whether or not that network is what's called encrypted. So encrypted means that you need a password to actually connect to the network. If you don't have a password, it won't let you connect. Some networks don't have this little lock button on them there. So you can see on the example on the screen there, I'm actually just going to bring up the spotlight so it shows easier. So this one here, actually all of these on here have a little lock button on the bottom right-hand side of the connection symbol. All of these are encrypted networks. So if you wanted to join any one of these networks, you would have to have the password to join. This one at the top here, this one called Wi-Fi guest. Notice how there's no little lock on the top or on the bottom right-hand corner. That means that it's not encrypted. What that means is you can typically join without having to enter a password in. Now, if you are in your own home, you want to make sure that you have encrypted your home network. You want to make sure that there's a little lock on it. The reason why is you don't want just random people joining your network, using up your Wi-Fi, slowing it down for everybody else. Plus, it also opens you up to potential risks as well. If you have other people joining your network, they can maybe do some bad things. So you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself by encrypting your home network. On your phone, if you're joining your own network there and you know the password, it won't cause you any trouble at all. It's just when you initially join, you'll have to enter that in that password, and then after that, you won't have to worry about it. So networks where you typically won't see a lock is usually not home networks, but rather hotspots. So what a hotspot is essentially a network that is provided by usually a company, usually a company in order for you to be able to connect and use their data. So oftentimes where you're going to see that is places like, I don't know, let's give an example. Starbucks, maybe McDonald's, maybe the library. They want to provide Wi-Fi or internet actually as a public service there. Usually when you click on these networks, so in the example here, you can see, yeah, McDonald's free Wi-Fi on here. You'll be able to click on that, and then after that, it will actually ask you to log in and agree to their terms and conditions. So that's just saying that they're providing it to you, and in order to be able to use it, you have to agree to the terms that they set out for it. Um, One thing that I would say is do not, if you're on a public network, do not enter in your credit card or banking information. Again, public networks aren't necessarily secure networks. So the things that you do on these networks, you want to make sure that you are effectively being careful. So don't leave your device unattended. Typically, don't shop online. And the reason why I say don't shop online is usually if you're shopping, you're also entering in your information at a checkout at the end. So it means that maybe that information can be taken there. I'll say that it doesn't happen all the time. It's always better to be safe than sorry. You want to make sure that you're protecting yourself and your information. Um, when you're using public net or public Wi-Fi, apps such as YouTube, Facebook, and other gaming apps can be limited. So again, use it for checking out things online. Use it for getting information, but any of your sensitive personal information, try to avoid searching for that. Any questions on this part? Nope. Okay. Um, so next one I'm going to talk about is data. So the difference between data and Wi-Fi is data typically will be provided by your cell phone company. So if you have a contract with, say, TELUS or Rogers or Shaw Mobile or maybe Bell or whatnot, typically your contract is going to include something called data. And data will usually have a limit on it, usually denoted in gigabytes. So effectively what that is how much data you can use on a monthly basis. So unlike Wi-Fi, typically when you're using data, you do have a limit on how much you can use. And depending on what you're doing with your phone, sometimes it can actually be pretty easy to hit that data cap. So for instance, my phone has a 6 GB per month data cap on it. What that means is I can use 6 GB per month of data. So where I'm not connected to my home network there. So that's not too bad. I can like surf a lot of web pages with 6 GB of data, but I might not be able to watch tons and tons of YouTube videos or stream a whole bunch of movies on only 6 GB. So if you're planning on doing things that are very media intensive, very data intensive, so downloading a lot of stuff, you might want to do that in your home network. If you're just browsing web pages, maybe looking up the odd video here and there, maybe streaming a little bit of music, things like that, then it's probably okay to use your data. But you do want to know how much you actually have before you start going online there. And typically you can find this on your cell phone bill. It'll usually tell you what your data limit actually is. So just like with Wi-Fi, in order to see if your data is turned on or turned off, if you go to the main screen on your phone and drag from the top down, in order to pull up the menu section here, mobile data or just data will actually be probably one of the options that's available for you to see. It's probably going to be one of the first few ones at the very top there. So just make sure that it's turned on your phone right now. Actually, I should clarify this. Make sure you have data and then make sure it's turned on. If you don't have data, don't turn it on. So if you're not sure, wait till later and check your cell phone bill to see if you have a data cap or if you have a data limit or not. Um, so earlier I mentioned how there are usually limits on how much data you can actually use. Well, luckily on Samsung phones and Huawei phones, you can set a limit on how much data you can use on these phones. So I don't believe you can do this with some of the other versions of Samsung or Android phones. Like I don't believe it's available on Lenovo phones, but if you have a Samsung or a Huawei, what you can actually do is under the settings option there, I'll just talk about the Samsung one for a sec. If you go to connections again, and then scroll down to data usage, there's an option on there called billing and cycle data warning, or billing cycle and data warning. So this one you actually probably want to turn on and set data warning. What this means is you can actually set how much data you have as part of your contract and when your contract resets. So for example, if you have 6 GB of data, you can tell it that you have a data limit of 6 GB. you can also tell it that your contract resets the first of every month. So what I mean by the first of every month is let's just say it's the first, every first you will get your data reset and you can use a whole new set of data. So for mine, it's the beginning of every month and then I can use another 6 GB of data. So on my phone, what I'd probably want to do is I'd probably want to turn it on and set probably not 6 GB. I probably actually want to set a little bit lower than that, maybe 5.5 gigabytes, and then have it set so that it's reset on the first of every month. The reason why I don't want to set it at exactly 6 GB is it's a really big pain when you run out of data in the middle of the month. And then all of a sudden, if you're out and about and you need to look something up, you have no data available to you. So typically what I want to do is I want to set it so that I know how much data I'm using, or if I'm using too much, just a little bit before I hit the cap. That way I can temper how much I use for the rest of the month. I want to make sure that if I'm getting really close, that I'm only using my data for essential things and maybe not necessarily, let's say, frivolous things. That way I can at least extend it out until the end of the month when I get more data, and then I don't have to worry about that again. So if you're on a Huawei phone, if you go to wireless and networks under your settings icon, and then data usage, and then more data settings, and then just like with the Samsung phones, you can set that same data limit under monthly data limit. So check on your phone to see if you have this option. If you do, I would definitely recommend using it once you know how much data you actually have available. So any questions on that part?
Hi, I'm Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
On my phone, it's set is for from the beginning to the end of this month. There is 38 megabyte of mobile data.
38 megabytes?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's very
I
low.
don't know. Does it connected with my message? Sometimes it says that you are too full and you have to take out something instead. So does it connected together?
So does it say MB next to it or GB?
MB.
Oh, very low. Okay, so 32 megabytes is actually very, very little data in there. So what you might want to do is check your cell phone bill, find out how much data you actually have on your phone,
Uh-huh.
and then what you can do is go into that setting, and then you can actually adjust that number. So right
Oh.
now, it's set at something that's really, really low. Like that's actually very, very low. That's almost not even enough to visit a single web page,
Uh-huh.
unless you were connected to Wi-Fi. So double check on your cell phone bill, find out how much data your contract includes. And then once you know, go in there and change that number to something a little bit closer to your data limit. That way, when you're actually sending messages or whatnot, it won't pop up with a message almost every single time saying that you're near your data limit. Because that's
Oh,
probably a big pain saying that you're near your data limit almost every time you use it, right? If you're not at
yes,
home.
that's right. That's right. So I don't know. That means I can set it up by myself?
Yeah. Well, no. So when you change that number, that's just you telling your phone how much data you have on your contract. Your phone doesn't actually know. It's just essentially what it's doing is it's just trying to warn you if you've used enough data to get close to the limit that you've set. Where your actual limit comes from is your phone provider. Who do you use? Is it like Telus or Shaw or Bell or Rogers?
Oh no, I'm using Samsung.
Oh, no, no, not the phone type,
Bell,
but like
Bell. Yeah,
Bell?
I'm
Okay, yeah.
using Bell.
So Bell is the one that actually sets the limit on how much data you have in your contract. So you want to check with them to find out how much is included in your contract. Then once you know how much is included, you can actually make that setting on your phone, so that if you ever get close to that limit, it warns you. Um, if you don't have a data limit, then that's maybe why it's set so low. But I would double check on your Bell contract. Just look at one of your monthly statements to see how much data you have. That way, you can set it to something more reasonable, and your phone won't keep stopping you from using data anytime you send anything over, like even a tiny picture.
Oh, do you mean that I can find the number of data from my Bell statement, the
Yeah,
monthly statement?
usually it'll
It
tell
was
you on
there.
there. So
Oh,
things that your statement will tell you is usually how many minutes you have a month, how many messages you've sent,
oh,
what your data is, like what your data limit is, and how much you used. So check your statement, and you should see something like that listed on there.
I see. So if it's bigger, it's higher than what I'm, obtaining now on my phone. I can change it myself. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. So actually, that's a really good example. And I'll just tell you where that would be a big pain if I was doing it there. So I was saying earlier how I have 6 GB of data. So that means
Mm,
every month I can use a lot of data. So that means I could stream a bunch of movies, or well, I shouldn't say a bunch of movies. I could stream a bunch of videos on YouTube. I could download a bunch of
mhm,
pictures, maybe listen to some music and all those things like that. But if I have it set to 24 megabytes of data as
mm,
my limit, what I've told my phone that's the amount of data that I have, then if I listen to one song or if I watch one movie on YouTube, I would probably hit that data cap within 2 or 3 minutes. So
mhm.
it would all of a sudden warn me that you have no more data and it won't let you use data, and then that would be a big pain for the rest of the month. And especially
Yeah.
if you're paying for a bigger amount of data too, you want to make sure that you're giving your phone permission to be able to let you use that.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
Yeah. Thank
Perfect.
you.
No problem. All right. So the last topic that I want to cover in today's session here is something called airplane mode. So airplane mode is airplane mode is a feature that you can turn on in your phone to disconnect the phone from sending wireless signals. So this could be a whole bunch of different things. This could be Wi-Fi, this could be data, this could be Bluetooth, this could be just general cell phone connectivity here. So usually you would use airplane mode when you're on an airplane. You know how they will tell you put your phone into airplane mode or turn off your phone just before takeoff and landing? Apparently, they have very sensitive things on airplanes that they don't want interfered with by your phone. So airplane mode can be really useful because it's a button that lets you really quickly turn off all of the networks that you have without actually having to go in and turn them off manually. So you don't have to go in and click Wi-Fi and click Bluetooth and click cell phone data and those things. You can just click a single button, airplane mode, and it'll turn all those off for you. And then when you've landed and you've disembarked your flight, you can click the airplane mode button again, and it'll turn all of those things back on. Airplane mode can also be useful when you're in a different country as well and you don't want to accidentally get roaming charges. So one of the few things that you can turn on while airplane mode is enabled is you can actually turn Wi-Fi back on. And this might be useful if you are, say, traveling to a different country and you don't accidentally want to connect your cell phone, your plan to one of the local cell phone towers. But you do want to connect to Wi-Fi, which is maybe provided by a hotel or by a coffee shop in the destination that you're in. So you can click the airplane mode button and then click the Wi-Fi button, and it'll only turn on Wi-Fi, but it won't turn on your data. So this is good, and I've used this a few times. One example that I can use for this one was when I was in Southeast Asia. So I didn't want my cell phone connecting to any of the cell towers around there because I'd pay huge roaming charges. But I did want to be able to connect to Wi-Fi because I wanted to be able to call my family. Not call my family, but send messages to my family. So I turned on airplane mode and then I turned on Wi-Fi and I connected to one of the networks that they had in order to be able to send messages. So I was confident knowing that I wasn't incurring any roaming charges, but I also knew that I could send messages and things like that. So very handy. So how you'd access that, this one actually luckily has a little video that I can show you. So you drag from the top, and this is one of those ones where it might not be, let me just get to the point. This one might not be one of the first options that you'll see when you drag from the top. What you might have to do is continue dragging down so that it opens up the full list of options available. And one of the options on there, it'll either be called airplane mode, or in the video that I have here, it's called flight mode. So flight mode, oops, my screen has stopped going back and forth. So flight mode is this one right here. Same thing. It's just called something different depending on the phone that you have there, but both are considered airplane mode. So any questions about airplane mode? Have any of you guys used this one before? Yeah, I know it's one of the very common ones that people learn right away, especially when airplanes or when flight attendants will actually tell you to put your phone into airplane mode. Even if you don't know what it does, it's useful because they will essentially tell you to do it, and rest assured your phone is in good hands at that point. All right, so I've got a mini quiz at the end here. So why is there a little lock beside the Wi-Fi network? So who can tell me what this little lock on the right side of your Wi-Fi symbol actually means?
Is for your own protection. You need a password to get to the specific network.
You got it, exactly, Dave. So when you see that little lock, it means that that wireless network is encrypted, and in order to be able to join that network, you have to enter in a password. So next one. So can we get free Wi-Fi at a shopping center, cafe, or library?
Yes.
Yes, right.
This one's a bit of a trick question. The answer is actually maybe, because not every Wi-Fi or not every shopping center, cafe, or library will provide Wi-Fi, but a lot will. I know if you're in, say, Chinook or Market Mall, they'll provide Wi-Fi. Starbucks and McDonald's will provide Wi-Fi. The public libraries will all provide Wi-Fi. So usually you can, but it's not going to be at every single one of them. So, but if it is and you need to access Wi-Fi, great service. Do you need to sign in when connecting to a public Wi-Fi?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So typically with a public Wi-Fi, you don't have to enter in a password, but what they will ask you to do is agree to the terms and conditions that whatever company who's providing the Wi-Fi sets out. So sometimes that might mean signing up for like a newsletter that they provide. Other times what it might be is just essentially abiding by the terms and conditions, or well, abiding by the rules that they have for surfing online with them there. So you want to make sure that you are checking out these terms and conditions so you know what you're agreeing to when you sign up. So what is one thing that you shouldn't do when you're using your public Wi-Fi or when you're using public Wi-Fi?
You don't do any banking business. Anything that's sensitive. You don't want the public to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is such a great point there. When you're using public Wi-Fi, when you're, or even for that matter, if you're on a network that you don't trust, if you're not on your home network or on your own personal data connection, maybe avoid you doing anything sensitive like entering in your banking information or personal information there. It's not like it's always going to be bad, but you want to protect yourself and always think of the worst case scenario. So if it's something that's you can wait to do, wait to do it. If it's something that's absolutely mandatory, then you're probably going to be okay. But again, if you have the option to wait, then that's okay. So that is everything that we had today. Now we don't have any